I received a text message 3 weeks ago that made me pull my car to the side of the road because my hands were shaking too badly to drive. It was from a number I didn't recognize, an area code from my hometown in rural Pennsylvania, and attached to it were 4 photographs. 4 photographs of words scrawled in black ink behind peeling wallpaper. Words written in handwriting I recognized immediately because it was mine. My looping GS, my crooked YS, my habit of not crossing my TS all the way through. But here's the thing that made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. I have absolutely no memory of writing those words. And the words themselves don't make any sense. Or maybe they make too much sense. Maybe that's the real problem. My name is Ethan Marsh. I'm 34 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I'd left my childhood behind me in that house on Ridgewood Lane in the small town of Carver Falls, Pennsylvania. I thought I'd escaped it. I was wrong. Let me take you back to where this all started, really started, before the text messages and the photographs and the sleepless nights I've been having ever since. I need you to understand what that house meant to me, what happened there, and why receiving those images felt less like a mystery and more like something reaching out from a past I'd buried so deep I'd convinced myself it never happened at all. We moved into 147, Ridgewood Lane in the summer of 1997. I was 7 years old. My father had just gotten a job at the paper mill about 12 miles outside of town, and my mother was thrilled because the house was large, the mortgage was cheap, and the previous owners had left in such a hurry that they'd abandoned most of the furniture. My mother saw it as a blessing. Free beds, free dressers, a dining room table that could seat 8. She didn't ask why anyone would leave behind so much. She didn't want to know. None of us did. The house itself was a Victorian-style home built in 1902, with a wraparound porch that sagged in the middle and 3 stories of rooms that seemed to multiply the longer we lived there. I know how that sounds, but I mean it literally. There were doors I don't remember seeing when we first moved in. Closets that seemed deeper than they should have been. A basement that my father padlocked shut after the first week and never spoke of again. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor, at the end of a long hallway that creaked with every step you took. The wallpaper in my room was yellow with a faded floral pattern, roses maybe, or peonies, the kind of flowers that looked almost like faces if you stared at them long enough. And I did stare at them. For hours. Especially at night, when the shadows made them shift and swim across the walls like living things. I was not a happy child in that house. I need you to understand that. I was not the kind of kid who played in the yard or made friends easily or slept through the night without incident. I was afraid constantly, deeply, in a way I couldn't articulate to my parents because I didn't have the words for it yet. I was 7, then 8, then 9, and with each passing year, the fear grew heavier on my chest like a physical weight pressing down on me while I slept. I started sleepwalking during our 2nd year in the house. At least that's what my parents called it. My mother would find me standing in the kitchen at 3 in the morning, staring at the basement door, my fingernails bloody from scratching at the padlock. My father once discovered me on the roof, balanced on the narrow ledge outside the attic window, speaking in a low monotone voice that he said didn't sound like me at all. They took me to doctors, therapists, specialists in childhood sleep disorders. Nobody could explain it. Nobody could make it stop. We moved out of that house in November of 2003, 2 weeks before my 14th birthday. My parents never told me why. One day we were living there, and the next my father was loading boxes into a U-Haul while my mother sat in the passenger seat of our station wagon, refusing to look back at the house. I remember pressing my face against the rear window as we pulled away, watching 147, Ridgewood Lane shrink in the distance, and I remember feeling something I can only describe as relief mixed with something else. Something that felt almost like grief. We never spoke about the house after that. Not once. It became a silent agreement between the 3 of us. A wound we all pretended didn't exist. My parents divorced 2 years later, and my mother moved to Florida, where she still lives today. My father died in 2019, a heart attack in his sleep, and whatever secrets he carried about that house died with him. I built a life for myself. I went to college, got a degree in accounting, moved to Columbus, Ohio, and took a job at a firm that paid well enough to let me forget where I came from. I got married, then divorced, then married again to a woman named Sarah who knows almost nothing about my childhood because I've never wanted to tell her. I became the kind of person who doesn't look back. The kind of person who believes that the past is a closed door, locked and padlocked and buried under years of carefully constructed normalcy. And then, 3 weeks ago, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was simple. It said, "Hi, is this Ethan Marsh? My name is Dana Holloway. My husband and I just bought the house at 147 Ridgewood Lane. We're doing renovations and we found something behind the wallpaper in the second-floor bedroom. I think you need to see this." I almost deleted the message. I almost blocked the number and went back to my spreadsheets and my comfortable life and my willful ignorance. But then I scrolled down to the photographs, and my comfortable life ended. The first photo showed a section of wallpaper peeled away from the wall, revealing old plaster beneath. And there, scrawled in what looked like black permanent marker, were words. My handwriting, unmistakably my handwriting, the same handwriting I've had since I learned to write cursive in 3rd grade. The words said, "He lives in the walls. He knows you're reading this." The second photograph was worse, but I'll tell you about that next time. Hashtag the family who moved into my childhood home sent me photos of writing behind the wallpaper. It was my handwriting, but I never wrote those words. Hashtag part 2. The drive to my childhood home took 4 hours, but I don't remember most of it. My mind kept circling back to those photographs, to the impossible curve of letters I knew as intimately as my own heartbeat. The handwriting was mine. There was no question. But the words were someone else's entirely. Or were they? Sarah Chun met me at the front door before I could even knock. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with dark circles under her eyes that told me she hadn't been sleeping well. Behind her, I could see her husband Marcus holding their daughter, a girl of about 6 who watched me with eyes that seemed far too knowing for her age. "Thank you for coming," Sarah said, and her voice carried a tremor she was clearly trying to suppress. "I know this must be strange for you." Strange didn't begin to cover it. The house looked different than I remembered, but also exactly the same. The Chens had modernized the kitchen, painted the walls in warm earth tones, replaced the old carpet with hardwood floors. But the bones of the place remained unchanged. The way the staircase curved toward the second floor. The narrow hallway that led to what had been my bedroom. The basement door that still sat at the end of that hallway, its wood slightly warped from decades of humidity. I had always hated that door. "We started the renovation 3 weeks ago," Marcus explained as he led me upstairs. "The wallpaper in the master bedroom was peeling, and underneath we found, well, you saw the photos. The master bedroom had been my parents' room. I had rarely gone in there as a child, always feeling like I was trespassing on sacred adult territory. Now, standing in the doorway, I felt that old sensation return tenfold. The walls were stripped bare, pink insulation exposed in patches where they'd removed damaged drywall. But on the remaining plaster, covering nearly every available surface, was the writing. My writing. Hundreds of words. Thousands, maybe. Some of it was small and cramped, squeezed into corners. Other sections sprawled across the wall in letters 6 inches tall. All of it was in that distinctive slant I'd developed in elementary school and never quite outgrew. "The door stays closed," one section read. "The door stays closed, the door stays closed, the door stays closed." Another, "She sees through my eyes. She speaks through my mouth. She writes through my hands." And there, near the window, in letters so large they seemed to scream, "Don't let her out. Don't ever let her out." "We found more," Sarah said quietly. "In Emma's room." Emma, their daughter. The little girl who was staying with grandparents because she'd started having nightmares about a woman in the walls. They led me down the hall to the second bedroom. My old bedroom. The wallpaper here had been a cheerful pattern of butterflies and flowers, clearly chosen for a child. But where it had been pulled back, the same handwriting covered the walls. This writing was different, though. More frantic. The letters overlapped each other, becoming almost illegible in places. "I decoded some of it," Sarah said, pulling out her phone. "I took photos and spent hours trying to read it all." She showed me her notes, and my blood turned to ice in my veins. "It wasn't me who pushed him," She made me do it. She made me watch. I can hear her in the basement. She's always been in the basement. Mommy and Daddy don't believe me. They say it was an accident. But I saw her hands. I saw her use my hands. And finally, written so hard the pencil had torn through the wallpaper in places. I killed my brother, and I don't remember how. The room tilted. I grabbed the door frame to steady myself. Are you okay? Marcus asked. I wasn't okay. I would never be okay again. Because I didn't have a brother. I had never had a brother. I was an only child, born to parents who'd always told me they couldn't have more children after